here we are at the Twin Ponds Conservation Area. We are just above campus in the Conejo open space. When we look at these wetland settings, the first thing I'd like you guys to do is to look at the overall landscape. Okay, so we're here at Twin Ponds Conservation Area in the Conejo open space. We're just above campus. We have a couple of wetland ponds here, freshwater wetland ponds. Now the water, lay of the land first. Let's get a lay of the land of how the hydrology works. Super important for our wetlands. The water is going to drain downhill, so that's that away. That's towards the valley that away. If we look the other direction, if we look up, we're looking westward. We're looking where the water is going to drain in from, and that's basically towards our CSUCI campus. So here's the ponds. Let's talk about these ponds. These ponds were first built in the 1920s in support of Dos Vientos Ranch that was here to support the agriculture and the some small scale farming they were doing here. So these were essentially retention basins. So when it would rain, they could capture all this rainwater, and then over the course of the year, down out through that side, they could release it onto their for their cattle and things of that nature, or indeed the livestock could actually just come on down and drink the water. Now, right now, this is obviously a seasonal wetland. It's not wet year round, or not continuously wet year round. And this lobe here, we can see there's no standing water at the moment. If we get the right angle, you can see a bit of a reflection. See a bit of the mud reflecting the sun, the lowering sunlight right here. And that's indicative of water just below the surface. So there might not be standing water, but there's definitely, the soil here is very moist. So that's great for things like herps, frogs, and insects and things of that nature. The next, so okay, that's the water. The water is coming in and going out. The next thing we notice in our wetland systems is typically the vegetation. And so here we have this fringing halo of typha, of reeds. And so these guys are going to be where we have water, not necessarily continuous water, but we have lots of water. These guys don't live in dry hillsides. And so this is indicative of having this water. It's also indicative of not having a lot of disturbance. If this was a lot of trampling, or if this was, say, more of a riparian system where water was moving up and down, these guys would be disturbed. So this is an indicator also of still water, relatively stagnant water once it accumulates. And then as we go above, as we look at the vegetation above, we start to see, for example, in the drain out area, we see some sycamores, and we see woody vegetation and oaks and things of that nature that are benefiting from this relatively high water table that exists here. So we have this stratification of vegetation going from the no vegetation in the mostly wet area to a reed type of vegetation right around the periphery, and then more terrestrial vegetation, but nevertheless water loving. And then as we go higher, we're into the scrub and the coastal sage plants. So that's one of our lobes. Now, if we go over to the next lobe, let's talk about this. So again, these were built in the 1920s, and then this current housing development that's just downhill from us, this housing development the construction was begun in the late 1990s. And so when this went in, this area was improved for what we call improved for recreation. That improvement is a judgment call, but it's the general term. So we have different public trail systems here, recreational trail systems. Now this is for people hiking, biking, taking their horses out, all that kind of good stuff. As we look to the north here, we have another lobe. And in this other lobe of the twin wetlands, what you actually see standing water. And so this area is obviously deeper. It's lower than the elevation over here. Actually, the area where I'm standing on this little a walkway, or the area in between, is a high point. So it creates, in effect, pond 1 and pond 2. Now, with the standing water in this second pond, that can come from two different sources. That can come from, yes, it could be lower first and foremost, but also there could be a better impervious layer underlying this. So there could be better, maybe more complete clay layer or other rocky structures that would act as a more perfect barrier to retain that moisture. In this case, though, it's while I haven't done excavations here, it's almost assuredly because it is at a slightly lower elevation. This pond is about 10, 20 feet lower than this pond over here. And so again, if you look at this pond, it's the same setup. Just like this other one, it was built in the 1920s to support the ranching operations. And you can see this true zonation of the vegetation based on the amount of inundation and water. So this area is a conservation area and a recreation area. So this is an important spot for locally, not maybe nationally, but at least regionally, locally, for critters that do need water. So say migratory fowl that need some water, coyotes needing a drink, that type of stuff. Two-striped garter snakes, those types of critters really do well here. Yeah, so this is our Twin Pond conservation area, and it's a classic example of a small little geographically quite constrained wetland, but is nevertheless useful and valuable to the local ecosystem around here.